Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to do a bit of work on the WPL C44KM. Last time, while fitting the ball ends to the plastic mounts, I managed to snap one of them off. There was a bubble right in the plastic at the weakest point. I bodged it back together so we could finish that stage of the build, but it was always going to need fixing properly. So I ordered a pair of metal link mounts. These were the only type I could find, which, looking at them closely, are really designed for a different revision of the WPL chassis. We'll start on the rear axle by removing the link mount. It's held on with 4 M2.5 screws that pass through the mount, through the axle, and thread into threaded metal plates on the bottom. With all 4 screws removed, the mount just comes away. On the ends, the lower links just unscrew from the plastic, and in the middle there's the top link that's attached with a long M3 screw and nylock nut. Right then, first problem. When trying to fit the upper links with the M3 screw to the top of the aluminium mount, the screw won't go in the hole. It's just a bit too small. Turns out if we try an M2.5 screw, it threads in perfectly. Same with the holes for the lower links. Time to get the tools out then. We're going to need a vise to hold the mount so we can drill some of the holes. The lower link holes need to be drilled to 2.5mm and the centre hole for the upper links to 3mm. There's not going to be a vast amount of meat left around the upper screw, but it's a lightweight truck and it's metal, so I think it's going to be okay. After drilling out the lower link holes, they then need to be threaded with an M3 taper tap. The top links can go back on now. We reused the M3 screw and the nut from the kit, putting a link on each side of the mount. Next we refit the lower links, which turns out to be somewhere between M3 and M4. The threads are a bit too big to fit in the M3 holes that we just tapped, yet they also don't fit an M4 thread. They're made of brass though, which is really easy to add a new thread to. We just need to use an M3 die to cut a new thread. I found it worked well enough just cutting the new thread straight over the old. If you look really closely at the peaks of the new thread, you can just about see evidence of the old one, but it's going to be plenty good enough. For both tapping holes and cutting threads with a die, there's loads of good videos and tutorials if you do a quick search. The best tip though is to always use plenty of lube and go slow. Now we can fit the lower links by screwing in the newly threaded ball ends into the mount. A bit of thread lock on these would probably be a good idea too. Now we just need to attach the new mount to the axle, and unfortunately the stock screws come up a bit short, so we're going to need some longer ones. I've got a bag of M2.5 by 20s that will do. They're a little bit long, but close enough. With the 4 screws in and the metal plates on the bottom, we've got a working rear axle ready to go with its new mount. For the most part, the front axle is going to be exactly the same. We've got to drill and tap the lower link holes and drill out the centre hole, cut a new thread on the lower ball ends and fit the new mount to the axle. When done, it should look something like this. But on the front axle we don't have a 4-link setup. Instead we've got 3 links with a panhard bar, and these new mounts don't have a bit for the panhard bar to mount to. Looking at one of the plastic parts, we can see there's an extra bit sticking out. Not a big problem though, a quick bit of 3D printing, and we've got an adapter that fits using the 2 screws that mount the mount to the axle. We just screw in the M2.5 screws and we've got a mount for the panhard bar. It's positioned to match the stock part, so as long as WPL got the geometry somewhere near right, it's going to work well enough. Now I think so we can see how it all works, we'd better fit the axles to the chassis. At the moment, one of the balls for the rear axle is right up against the shift servo arm, which will make it impossible to fit. So rather than remove the whole gearbox, we just need to remove its 2 rear screws so we can hinge it up out of the way. Now all we need to do is pop the upper links into the upper balls and the lower links on the bottom balls. But wait, something isn't quite right here. It looks like I didn't interpret the instructions quite right. The lower links are way too long, or rather the upper links are too short. Turns out the short links that I've got on the top of the rear axle need to swap with the long lower links of the front. Not a big deal, but it does show that the instructions really aren't as clear as they should be. After swapping the links around so the rear has the 4 long ones and the front the 3 short ones, we can have another go at attaching the axle. All we need to do is clip the 4 links onto the balls on the chassis, then clip the lower ends of the shocks on the ends of the double ball ends. And there we go, there's one axle fitted. We need to hinge the gearbox back into place now and refit the 2 screws before moving on to the front. This time we've got a panhard bar to go on first, which clips onto the ball that's attached under the servo. Then there's a single upper link and the 2 lower links, followed by the bottoms of the shocks. Simple, and despite a rather crazy angle on the links, it does seem to work fairly well. It's never going to be super plush, but it'll do nicely. Right now the angle of the axles is a little bit off. You can see the input shaft is facing slightly downwards. The front axle isn't quite sitting in the centre either. But that's just a case of making some small adjustments to the length of the links, making the top links a little bit longer and the lower links a little bit shorter. I'm going to sort that out off camera for next time, as there's a fair bit of trial and error to get everything just right. So, well, that was a shorter video than usual, but my schedule, as well as just about everybody else's, has been a bit strange lately. Next time we'll be back onto the build proper rather than a mid-build upgrade. Prop shaft, the wheels, tyres, and fitting the body, I should think. Right, so anyway, that's it for this week then. As always, thanks for watching. Like if you like, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a message if you've got something to say. Bye guys!